I actually just entered that age of those like 25 to 45. So I'm looking forward to it, right? If we're talking about that, it goes
Yeah.
down here with stress and stuff. What's your advice to
Well,
me as someone who's just entering that period?
well, first, if you're just 25 or so, you're already really far along, and it's real, and just that's good. So you're,
But can I say something important here? I don't always feel that way, and I think that's important. Where it's like,
no, I
even no
know.
matter how far you are, it's that comparison trap that we were just talking about, right?
Oh, I know. I do. It's poignant. I've dealt with that myself too. Um, oof. Well, since you asked, stop me and if I start sliding into professor mode, and I'll break this up kind of quickly. Okay. So first off, a research frame on adult development. It's pretty cool. People can look it up from originating a guy named Daniel Levinson. Gail Sheehy wrote in the 70s and 60s. Gail Sheehy wrote a book, Passages, about it. Basically, the idea is that adult development tends to move forward in these cycles of organization, disorganization, and reorganization. So you have these rhythms, and they're normal. You put it together, and then it kind of falls apart. And then you look around, and then you create something new. The phoenix rises from those ashes in a rhythmic kind of way. And along the way, there are certain stages that tend to be common on that journey. In the 20s, commitments tend to be tentative. They're significant. We're putting ourselves into them. But there's a certain amount of regrouping. Typically around our 30s, people tend to settle into what their career will be, or as I did late in life, settle into graduate school in their 30s for their career in their 40s and onward. And often they'll do pair bonding, unless they're into serial monogamy or massive polyamory along the way. That's kind of a rhythm. So the question becomes then, okay, how can I do organizing well? What would help me to organize in my life? And then on the other hand, if I'm going through a phase where I really need to let things fall apart a bit, or I need to really think newly, I need to walk away from tunnels in which there's no cheese. I'm never going to get promoted in this company. This is a good fill in the blank man or woman I'm in a relationship with, but they're just not the person I want to be with for the rest of my life for whatever reason. Do that well and then reorganize. So that might sound kind of abstract, but it's a good broad principle. And accept the necessity sometimes that things are going to change. I think these days, actually, unlike, my dad's dad was born on a ranch and was going to be a rancher his whole life. And, my dad's dad wanted my dad to be a rancher, but my dad saw the Great Depression and walked away and became a zoologist eventually. So just accept, that these days people have usually 2.5 careers. Okay, so far, one. Then two, to me, what's your why for not, frankly, jumping off a bridge? Life has pain. Life has loss, right? Why do we keep going? Right? And we're exposed to risks. There's a Zen proverb, why do trees wither and leaves fall? And the answer, very Zen, is body exposed in the golden wind. To enjoy the gold of the wind, we have to live exposed. And sometimes that wind is cold and harsh. We have to live that way. So why stick around? Well, to me, the answer boils down to 3 kinds of why. Know your why. One kind of why is quality of life, which includes everything from apple pie a la mode to being in love, quality of life, values, broadly, right? Then second, our service values. Independent of quality of life, even if it brings down our quality of life, we want to help. We're going to stand by the bedside of our aging and sick parent. We're going to go to work in a refugee camp. We're going to, help someone over here, even if it pisses off someone over there who will then retaliate against us. We choose service values, benevolence values. That's cool. And then the third why is also independent of either of those, although it overlaps, learning values, including healing and awakening. Learning. What do you want to learn? Okay. So to me, those are three kinds of why, and they're good to really consider for yourself and to ask yourself, how's my quality of life? How's my service? And how's my learning? Okay, so far. You want my last one about career?
Yes.
Are you sure? Okay, good. This will be quick. I really screwed up on my career. I drifted in my 20s. I made choices that I grew a lot from, but cost me a decade, really. And that you cannot recover that decade when you're in your 50s. It's just, okay, everybody else is 10 years ahead of you, roughly. And then what do you do? And it's harder and harder to get into the main current of career in your 40s and 50s than it is in your 20s, let's say. So here's some advice that I learned. One, take the long view and realize that the cost of building whatever you're trying to build for your career, your occupation, will be amortized across the whole 50-year lifespan of your career these days. So grad school, apprenticeships, investing in training, investing in yourself, investing in a business, putting up with sleeping on the floor, and eating noodle ramen every day. Suck it up. Realize those costs are real for those years, but they will be distributed, paid off over 40, 50-year lifespan. But the benefits that you accrue from investing in yourself in those ways will compound over the 40, 50 years of your lifespan. And, that's a really useful way to understand it. And then last, if you're trying to decide what to do, I think about the sweet spot that's at the intersection of three circles. What are you really naturally talented at? You're just inherently really good at it, distinct from acquired skills. Okay? Second circle, what do you love doing? Doesn't have to be related to work or money. Just what do you love doing? What lights you up? It's intrinsically rewarding, right? And then the third circle is, what do you care about? What are your moral principles and values? What do you want to help in the world? Children, whales, the environment, politics, whatever it is, right? Well, if you think the intersection of those three circles, what your talents, your loves, and your values, that intersection is the sweet spot. And the rest is details from there around money, where do you want to live, what kind of company do you want to be in. But if you're at the center of those three circles, you're going to be good to go.
What do you think is the biggest misconception that younger people have about being an adult?
That it will happen for only a short time.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah. And, these days, normal lifespan, in the 80s, in developed countries, certainly. And, it's hard to realize, I think, when you're in your 20s, how long that is. When you're in your 70s, like I'm 72, you look back and you go, as many people do, I actually don't, but many, many people say, whoa, it just flew right by. So that's looking back. But prospectively, it's a long run. And so what am I trying to say about that? So I think that's a misconception that has implications. I'd love to hear what you think. Like I did an exercise once with this 16-year-old, young, maybe 17, young woman. Anyway, I said, okay, let's take a piece of paper. I turned it sideways, and I said, let's just mark the years. She was sort of sweating. What am I trying to do? Where am I going? Who am I trying to be? What am I becoming? Right? There you go. And I said, let's just lay it out. And each little row was a year. Took it out mid-40s and beyond. She was already in shock at the prospect of actually being 45 someday. I say, you want to be 45, let me tell you. You want to be 85 if you can. Who wants to be 100? Someone who's 99. Go for it. And that really impressed upon her the long haul. And you start to realize, I can work backwards. If I'd like to be kind of roughly here, not being all crazed about it, but yeah, I'd like to be settled down in a good relationship. And I sure like the option of being able to have children then if I want to, if I'm with the right person and the stars are aligned. What needs to happen now that I'm 28? Whoa, I need to start zeroing in on, stabilizing with somebody and being married by the time I'm 31, let's say. It suddenly kind of gets real, or you start thinking about, pardon me, the realities of retiring. I had saved no money to speak of by the time I was in my early 50s. And I had ignored and rebelled against my Depression-era parents' advice. Dude, start saving, even $10 a week, in your 20s. I was in trouble. And that forced some choices that turned out okay, as it turned out. But, look ahead to things like that. So I think the long run, I would just say that. And then I would also say, avoid catastrophic mistakes. I got lucky a few times where I easily could have been killed, in wilderness, rock climbing type stuff, car accident type stuff, driving over the limit, definitely type stuff, being in bad situations, dangerous situations, bad stuff. And I've made mistakes, I'll spare you the gory details, with people in my life as well. And also catastrophic mistakes, for yourself. Don't waste your 20s. That doesn't mean you'd have to stress out and work 60 hours a week to become partner of the law firm, right? If you don't really care about that. But don't make big mistakes as much as you can. Avoid making big mistakes. Don't get a felony. Don't have a major life-changing injury. Don't burn 3 years of your life in a cult, which I did in your 20s. That's consequential.
I would go there, but we're running out of time. That sounds like a long story. So my last question for you is, if you had a minute with your younger self, what would you tell him? I'm assuming it's very similar to the stuff you just said, but if you had 1 minute, what would you say?
Lighten up. Know that you are already good. And enjoy the ride.